This is the Open Global Mind Community Call for Thursday, August 21st, 2025. We had a very nice call last week about kind of reliability of sources, like what sources do we trust? How do we know what information to trust? And today's topic is kind of along the same line and was sparked in part by Ted Gioia, who sent a post I'm going to put in the chat right now called "Our Shared Reality Will Self-Destruct in the Next 12 Months." And Ted Gioia has a Substack called The Honest Broker. He's a music expert, and he's been doing, in particular, the things that have gone viral for him have been his occasional takes on the music industry and the content industry and how it's being eaten by TikTok and instant gratification and a bunch of other things. And I don't know how he writes as much as he does. He's really prolific, but the writing is always high quality. And in this one, he's kind of saying, "Hey, I used to be able to sort of tell when a song was made by a robot, by AI. I'm pretty sure that boundary is blurring, and there's a whole mess of other boundaries blurring, and this could have some calamitous ways of playing out, consequences." And I actually haven't managed to read it all the way to the end, but that got me thinking about a lot of the things that we were talking about last week. So I figured, well, let's put a stake in the sand there and see where it takes us. Because if we lose, so you could argue that once the three news networks that were on American TV every evening, Cronkite, ABC, CBS, and NBC, once those melted away into the intertubes and a whole bunch of other things showed up, and then also it was aided by CNN and Fox and a whole bunch of other players sort of creeping in first before the internet sort of ate things. And now we're kind of awash. You could argue that we've lost the shared narrative or collective experience of listening to the same people and the same news in roughly the same way. And that's an interesting argument. But now I think the argument might be we're not even going to agree on the same facts of what happened because we won't be sure what actually happened. And there will be lots of people spinning things wildly in every direction, and there'll be lots of misdirection planted in our environments, and this could have some pretty severe consequences. Three things you want to say, three words that will solve the problem. Gil, what three?
I think there's at least three questions that you're raising, Jerry.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Tease them out for us, will you?
Let me see if I can. This is the problem with the brain. One is that the three news networks were a shared conversation. It was not, excuse me, sorry, it was not facts, because even then there were a lot of alternate views. I mean, I think of I.F. Stone first and foremost, who would be deconstructing the news back in the early 60s with great rigor and saying, no, these guys are not covering the whole story. They had 25 minutes to summarize the world, and they were very selective in what they did. And there's an iterative common narrative behind what they did that they also created, but it did provide a national coherence for most people who paid attention to news at all in some kind of common story. That's number one. Number two, Stuart Brand was the first person I saw raise this, and I think it was in the mid-'70s when he was talking about the early advent of whatever the Photoshop precursor was saying that photographic evidence will no longer be documentary evidence. That was his claim and prediction, I think, in 76 or something like that. And it really stuck with me. And of course, we've seen that unfold in various ways. And now what you're talking about is the more highly developed version of that, where even any whether it's narrative or photographic or moving images or music, what have you, we can't tell anymore. So there's that. Excuse me. Third is that the cultural commitment to veracity is gone or going. Or let's put it this way: there are a lot of people who don't give a shit about that, where maybe they used to. And there was the fourth. And the fourth is just, how is into the more ontological philosophical, which is how do we know anyway? Because we are all of us constructing, living in interpretations of the world.
Right.
And even what I'm seeing on my screen right now, it's not what I'm seeing on my screen. It's an experience that's assembled in my brain from photonic input on receptor cells in my eyes. It's a constructed image
Yep.
as we are constructing meaning all the time. So I guess I needed four, but that's where I start with this. It's a lot. It's a huge topic. Oh, and number five, since
Wait,
you
there's more?
wait, there's more. It slices, it dices.
Yeah.
You provoke this call around the topic of reality, and it always brings me back to Lily Tomlin in that wonderful one-person show, Search for Intelligent Life of the Universe, where Trudy the Bag Lady, one of the characters she plays, says, reality, highly overrated. It's just a collective hunch. So I always think about reality as a highly overrated topic. I'll
Love
stop
it.
there.
That was plenty.
I've
That was
used
plenty.
I've used up my time for the morning. I'll be quiet from now on.
Excellent.
Right.
Or
Hi,
not.
Kalia.
Or not.
Kalia, the shadow that the sun is throwing behind you makes it look like you're in prison somewhere. Are you like in solitary right now, or what's the deal?
No, it's just it's like a curtain. So if I straighten it out, it's
Oh my God, you
fine.
can move the bars. That's so cool.
Yeah. And that's like the window. Wait, yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's the curtain and the windows right behind it, which are both behind you. I thought you were against a wall and it was a shadow being cast on the wall, but I was reading
No.
the image back wrong. See, reality is fuzzy anyway. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. Anyone want to take any of Gil's 5, 6, 7 questions and expand on them, play with them, add to them, whatever?
Can I just make one point? I've
Please.
recently watched, we're in the middle of it, series 2, something called The Capture on Netflix. Anyone seen that? No idea why it didn't get more traction. Came out the first series in 2019 or thereabouts, second series 2022.
The Capture.
And I guess it just landed on it. The Capture.
Uh-huh.
If you want to take on board what Gil was saying about cannot believe what you see or whatever, I think in 2019 it would have been way ahead of its time. Now, I almost saw it as a documentary. But anyway, it's an interesting play on you cannot believe what you see anymore and whatever. It's a very
I
good one.
I can read the Netflix blurb, which is right to the point. That says an ambitious London detective takes on a case involving an Afghanistan war veteran that drags her into a shadowy world where nothing is what it seems.
And just watch it. That's all I can say.
Cool.
There are about 3 dozen movies with the same one-liner.
Yeah, no, nothing is what it seems. Well, there's also The Truth Is Out There.
This is a slightly different take on Nothing's What It Seems.
Yeah.
Watch it. It'll be good.
So the series premiered in 2019.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to take us?
Yeah,
Please.
I'm actually more distraught by this in-your-face reality, like, for example, the Texas redistricting effort, to steal 5 seats, and no one caring whether this is understood as reality or not. I mean, the brutality of this to just, what are you going to do about it kind of thing. So you don't even have to misconstrue reality. It's, you are in a modern 21st century society faced with watching things that shouldn't happen. And here they do. And so spinning it in ways where they're whatever 30-40% of the population that are in favor of all this just go along with the argumentations. The Democrats are doing it, everybody does it, or the Democrats are doing it worse, and so on. And so that's really distressing.
Now, redistricting is messing, it's very real. I mean, what you're describing to me is bare fists politics that's happening, because usually redistricting happens every decade or so after the census. Trump is also trying to mess with the census and change how the census is collected and who counts and all that. So that's happening. But this Texas move is unusual because it's very obviously a play to win more votes and keep, the House or whatever. And Newsom had a clever answer to it, except if you look at all the states that are in play, apparently there's more wiggle room in red states than blue states. So that could be a losing battle if it cascades across the states. All of which is terrible, because I think we should have statistical districting. We should actually force districts to be roughly like representative in some neutral way, so that we can't do the gerrymandering thing, which I promise I did not invent, and figure out like how this all might work. But I think we're just terribly stupid about this. So we've allowed these districts to become weapons, political weapons. But I don't know if that's the melting of reality, Klaus. Is it to you?
Well, I'm just you mentioning this as an example. I mean, there are
Yeah.
dozens of other things where you just know, the system is being gamed, and they're doing it no matter what you think about it, and they don't even. I mean, it's not even really an attempt to hide it. It's just
Right.
out in the.
Agreed. Alex?
Does anybody else want to talk? I've spoken quite a lot so far, so anyone else want to get in?
They can put their hand up,
Okay.
as you did. Go for it.
Thank you. It amazes me how much our free, democratic, Western, whatever brilliant system we have basically tolerates, to me, it's corruption. It's not even a pretense of corruption. Gerrymandering, no matter which country you do it in, you're doing it in your favor. Even when you say, I mean, in the UK, we have a neutral, independent board that does this or that. Forget it. It's as compromised as everything else. It's magically, the border changes seem to favor the party in power. And it just absolutely amazes me how we tolerate it. But it's the machinery of the system. And nothing seems to stop it. I mean, literally, we're talking about it, and we tolerate it. Just nothing to do. Well, that. and to me, it amazes me that we talk about democracy and all the rest of the values we have, and I could go on about crony capitalism, but let's leave that for another time. And yet, we don't question it. It's just so low in our worry, things to worry about.
I think some people are questioning it. I think some people are questioning it.
Oh,
they're just ineffectual. I mean, there are people yelling about these problems, but they're not winning any major vote or anything like that. It's not complete. It's not completely below everybody's radar. There are people shouting, "This is really terrible."
But the press and everyone doesn't question it. They don't kind of say, "Oh, the mainstream press we're talking about." Okay, if you go off piste, I'm sure that everybody will have a different opinion, but the main players don't seem to challenge it. Challenge the right word. Challenge it. And I don't know if anyone will say anything more about the gerrymandering thing. I've got something else to do with we can't believe what we see anymore, but I'll leave that for later.
We can go there. I did want to throw in that, just to what you just said, Alex. There's a thought in my brain, T91, which is the 91 indictments that Trump was under. And I was tracking the 5 or 6 different cases in all the different courts, and I was pretty sure that one of them would be very hard to evade and pin on, and would pin him to the wall somehow. And they managed very elegantly to evade all of them, and are currently weaponizing the Department of Justice and other parts of the government to attack all the people who were persecuting them. And the system's lack of ability to stop corruption and to roll it up and do something about it has astonished me. I've been blown away by that. And then a part of that whole thing is to scrub history later. and figure out how you can sort of change everybody's perception of events or whatever. And this is very dangerous because we humans are very adaptable, and anything you say 3 times is true, which is the Bellman's fallacy from Lewis Carroll. And so in the middle of all this, one problem is we don't have a common memory. We don't have a common place to put things. But the other one is that everything is becoming squishy-er. And if you want to head in that direction, Alex, please do.
Minor comment on the Trump situation. I could have a pretty, you'd think I was crazy with the theories I have about things. I'll throw this is what isn't what I want to say, but I'll throw one thing in. President Trump do we agree that he stopped illegal immigration across the border or not? I don't know. It's way down. The sell is that it's way down, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to think about this. All that, no matter what you think, all that migration, 95% of it was done by people, the mafia, basically, illegal entities, right? So he's taken away from them between 50 and $100 billion a year. My life experience tells me that you don't take 50 or 100 billion out of those kind of people's hands and live to tell the tale. And he's quite happily doing it, and it's fairly safe. I'm not saying he's part of it. Don't even think I'm saying that. I'm not. But whatever power he has, it is a lot of power. And I don't know under what, it's legal power, but he's managed to do it. So do not underestimate the man's ability to do things, right? And I think he's doing it legally. I don't think he's doing anything wrong. But anyway, that's on the issue of so don't underestimate what that man can do. That's all I'm saying. On the other issue of we don't know what's stable anymore. I was literally today speaking to a friend of mine where we kind of, my background is so diverse that I never believe anyone or anything. I listen to the news and I say, oh, they could have said it this way. They gave it 5 minutes instead of 2. They gave it 2 instead of 10 seconds, whatever. I'm always in this world of whatever. And I was talking to this other person who was more or less in league. And we agreed that right now, whether we're left or right or center, we have no idea what the hell is going on. It used to be that I used to know my position. I used to see clearly what's going on. But what's going on at the moment, I can guess, you call me conspiracy theorist as to what's going on, but I cannot for certain say what's going on because everything is like, I thought this is what would happen, this is what happened, and it's all in flux. And I will say, just as an example, that something that I don't think was reported in the mainstream press, that do you know that on the day President Putin went to meet Trump in Alaska, that morning before he left, he signed papers authorizing American energy companies, ExxonMobil to be precise, to be able to go and do business in Russia. That morning before he left the flight, he signed those papers. Right? And that's a fact. I'm not making it up. That is,
are you sure that's a fact?
It is a fact, yes. Okay,
so that's part of our conversation here. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's things afoot that I have no idea what's coming next. Okay, because by the way, these laws or whatever against foreign companies and energy came in after the sanctions came in and whatever, so Russia retaliated with these things. But specifically in energy, Putin signed a decree to say that they can come back in. So and then he went to meet Trump. Was it a condition to meeting Trump? What? I have no idea anymore. What is going on? Is it financial? Is it politics? Is it international? Whatever. And what are we going to do with Rocket Man in the corner there, top right corner of the map? Well, top left for you guys, but top right for me.
Which man?
Kim Jong, a North Korean person.
Oh, North Korea. Sorry. Yeah, rocket. That rocket thing. Yeah.
That rocket man. I mean, he's a force. So either the Russians have to control him, because I'm sure America doesn't want him uncontrolled. So where's the deal in that? That's where my brain goes, by the way, because it's really weird. But there's so many things at play. I have no idea anymore.
Let's go meta a little bit on the topic so that we can kind of look at, let's not talk about specific facts or things, but rather the effect of the melting on us, if we can. Gil?
So, Alex, if you could please share with us your sources for the Exxon story and the Mafia revenue story. I haven't seen those, and I'd love to run those down.
The source. Hold on. Sorry.
Just put them in,
the source of the
in the
Mafia
chat.
revenue is my thought. My thought is the Mafia revenue. Okay. It's just
okay.
what I know.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And the Exxon story, if you could put something in the chat on that, that would be great. The the borders seem to have been shut down. The Times reported this morning that immigrant population in the United States is down 1.5 million, declined for the first time in like a really long time. That's not just illegals, of course. That's a lot of other people who have split because it doesn't feel safe to them here. I think it's not accurate to say we don't know what's going on. With Jerry, you were talking about the rolling out of the Trump authoritarian strategy. This was all laid out in enormous detail in Project 2025, 900 some odd page strategy document. Last time I checked, which was 3 weeks ago, I'm sure the number is higher. 42% of the initiatives in Project 25 had been implemented. The game plan was there, out in the open, and let's say, nobody, in quotes, believed they were going to really do that. And they've just been marching through and executing. And they have identified and exploited the weak points in the checks and balances system that lets them get away with things or, face court actions. There have been a couple of hundred major court actions brought. They've lost most of them. But the question of enforceability remains. And so, I see our lawyer nodding his head there. Is like a big legal mess, a carefully constructed constitutional checks and balances system that had some flaws in it, one of which is that it presumed good faith on the part of the actors, and it didn't provide for checks and balances against not good faith. So we've got that. So we know that that's what's happening. But to Alex's other point about, I have no idea what's coming next, you said, Alex, that's the fucking reality right now. And we've all of us lived our lives with some amount of expectation and predictability of what would unfold next within certain kind of boundaries. And that game seems to be over for now. And so the big question is, how do we live in the midst of utter uncertainty? Optimism, pessimism is not the question anymore because you can't predict anything anymore. And so how do you live and how do you move and how do you be, how do we be effective in a world of such uncertainty, and standing on quicksand instead of on granite? How do we live and be and feel reasonably human, and live a creative, contributory life with each other in that world? That's where I go with these questions. Since you teed it up that way, Alex, thank you. And I'm complete.
Doug, please.
For the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So if everything in the theme of reality, if everything is period, and the universe of possibilities that are presenting themselves and happening are, the question, the living question to me has more to do with, as a person, as a human being, what would it take for me to reorient and recognize and acknowledge that, in fact, I don't have any control over anything beyond my skin. and extrapolating that in, larger collaborative contexts, collective contexts, legal, administrative, territorial contexts. Western culture and civilization is rooted in the opposite belief that somehow we actually have dominion and control over things, and that things are predictable when they're not. And that by force of will, we have the ability to control reality, which we can't. So, the cultural, societal, evolutionary delusion at the root of everything ends up making the active ingredients in all of this individual attachment to a set of beliefs, a set of projections, a set of fears, a set of attachments that are subjective truths. And groups of people that share the same subjective delusion find each other. Now, the reality is we're all in the same soup. We all live on the same planet. We all breathe the same air. We share it with a whole bunch of other living creatures that are not our species. We're subject to the forces and powers of the natural world, whether we like it or not. And the actions we take have consequences that affect ourselves, others, and the rest of the planet. And at least for me, figuring out how to recognize that they are us, that we're all of a part of the same whole, is the first step. And second corollary, that I have no power, control, authority, or ability to affect anybody or anything else. The only living thing that I have control over is me and what I do with me and my words, my actions, and my consciousness or awareness of how I'm affecting others. And I'm complete.
Thanks, Doug. Klaus, please.
Yeah, Sherry, when you introduced this, our shared reality will self-destruct in the next 12 months, my mind was going into a completely different place.
Yeah, which is where?
Which is, of course, our reality is going to self-destruct because the economic predictions and the rules that have been put in place are going to lead to consequences that are not intended. So Dave Brooks did, I listened to him, he is really on fire, giving presentations based on his Christian background. No, I mean, he's a very faith-focused individual, New Testament based, and he was going into this historic perspective of every time that you have an authoritarian regime, and it doesn't matter if authoritarian left or right, it all ends up in the same place, restricting individual freedoms, making decrease in economics and policies that are just nonsensical, or they are poorly conceived, always leads into some sort of calamity. So the economy is going to start crashing in multiple spots, particularly for the most vulnerable people in the society. So then what? Then that leads to authoritarianism. That leads to suppression. That leads to violence, basically, to prevent people from expressing their opinions. So that's really more where I was going. Our reality is going to fall apart, because the promises that have been made when the big, beautiful budget bill was passed, for example, are not going to turn out the way they were presented. Then what? Then it doesn't matter what pictures are being falsified, because this is real. I don't have food. My food stamps just got canceled. My medical bill, my Medicare just got Medicaid just got canceled. This is real and raw for a significant share of the population.
Plus, what you're saying is true for a moment and a perspective on politics. But what you're saying isn't that different from people saying what Biden's actions and policies were going to be was going to destroy the country, because name your other, from the other side of the field, looking at politics, oh my God, we're all going to die because the country's going to be in a mess. So what you're describing is normal, I think, normal politics playing out these days in a it seems in a much more extreme way, because previous political actors didn't try to shred the government like immediately, putting a dagger into its carotid. But it doesn't seem, it seems like extreme but not unusual politics. No?
I see it different, because somebody is losing health insurance. Somebody is losing their food stamps. The food bank just ran out of food now because their grants got cut off. The local NGO that has done Meals on Wheels, for example, just lost their funding. That's real stuff. That's not some political theory.
But a lot of places that lost government funding, their donations went way up. And I don't know, I haven't looked at all of these things, but part of what the big shakeup is about is redistributing how these things work in the world and fixing perceived flaws in how to fix social problems. That's I think the Project 2025 agenda is to implement an entirely different regime of how to deal with the country, the government, belief systems, et cetera, like it or not. And these things happen periodically in this country. The big deal, the far right conservatives have been fighting the big deal since the 30s, since the big deal. They hated it, the New Deal, and also the Great Society later under LBJ. And the far right thinks that the whole country has been screwed up completely by these programs. And these are the programs that are being presently undermined. So for them, this is a big circle back to a better time when we didn't have so much reliance on government, blah, 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 blah. But it's a political conversation for me. And these political conversations have enormous human consequences, because politics is so big and has so many influences everywhere, and can take money and shift it around and build stuff and do stuff or hurt people. So
we're talking about $1 trillion taken out of the base of pyramid economy. $1 trillion. The $290 billion out of SNAP. Those numbers are not recoverable at the state level. So they lead to major disruption that no one is dialing in on. But no one's paying attention.
Okay. Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, I was off camera because I was eating breakfast and I was listening attentively. And just maybe to dovetail on what Klaus was just saying. Actually, I'm hoping for a profound economic depression that will demonstrate how ineffective the counter response may be in accommodating these huge deficits in social support services. So what I'm hoping actually is the opposite, that it won't be a turn to authoritarianism, it will a turn against it, because the adversity is going to be so bad that people are going to say, well, maybe this isn't working. Having said that, I do want to acknowledge something that was said earlier, which is, reality is in the perceptions and biases of the observers, which means the people who are least well informed, who still drink the Trump Kool-Aid, will have to say, hey, this Kool-Aid isn't working for me. And so I framed a question which I will do a deep dive into, and we don't have time to do a deep dive into this one, but I want to return to a theme last week where I was proposing complex questions. And you know, Jerry, you asked me about curiosity, whatever. I'll respond to that later. But the whole point of compound philosophical questions is they're designed not to be understood on first reading. That's the whole purpose, to get out of our fast thinking mode of instant clarity and comprehension. This is our reductionist mindset that's propagated by the business community, the marketing community, which reinforces the MAGA brand and supports it. So people will keep on believing, having blind faith in the MAGA brand. So I'm going to put a question in, and if people want to pursue it, that's fine. I'm going to pursue it offline as people are. And I've already started doing an AI search on this question. I'm not going to read it out either, because you're not supposed to read them out. You're supposed to take it piecemeal, digest it a little bit. What does that mean? How does it relate to this? What's the interconnections with this, that, and the other? And that is anti-KISS. And I've mentioned this before, the KISS principle, which is keep sophistication this side of simplicity. The problem is that we're so locked into reductionist thinking that we are disabled from dealing with complexity. So I'll put the question in, read it. If you want to respond to it, that's fine. I'm going to do a deep dive and demonstrate how you can use HEN. I won't explain what that means, because I got a question about last week. You need some time to digest it, guys. And I will show you next week, if I can make it, what you can generate as a learning module to co-elevate our generative and strategic dialogues about how to deal with our complex entanglement of self-inflicted wicked problems which we're failing to address. And all I'm hoping for, let the depression come, because incompetence deserves it. And when it comes, let the pain be so bad that people are going to say, hey, I don't want to drink Don the Khan's Kool-Aid anymore. I'm Rick, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Rick. I'm interested in, a little bit puzzled that we haven't really talked about facts melting and other things happening and what effects that might have on society. We kind of haven't gone there much at all. And I want to maybe change the conversation a little bit by heading toward that topic, but on the positive side, because I think there are some positive aspects to what's happening to reality. And the biggest one I can see is it might actually drive us closer together. For example, oh my God, every student can use ChatGPT now to cheat on every exam and every resume and every job application. Oh my God, they're getting harder, if not impossible to detect. Oh my God, civilization is doomed. I'm like, well, no, we used to do oral exams. And it's really, really hard to sit in front of somebody and bullshit credibly for an hour about a topic you're supposed to have mastered. Like, mastery shows up in interaction. This is what apprenticeships are really, really great for. I remember years ago talking to the guy who founded the University of the Earth in Oaxaca, and he said, if you think you might want to be an agricultural lawyer, we can get you an internship with one right away. And in a couple months, you will probably know that this is a career for you or not. In a year, they will know how you're going to fit, what you need to learn, et cetera, et cetera. And the process lets you, try things out pretty quickly. And I'm like, what if the melting of intermediated reality, meaning the image of Doug sitting right now in one of the little squares in my grid view of the Zoom, is intermediated reality. And for all I know, it's actually an avatar, and Doug is out on his bicycle, exercising, and he's commissioned a bot to look like him sitting calmly in a chair. But when Doug and I are sitting in a cafe together, I think that's going to be very hard to spoof. And the fact that, we have time we logged in conversations like these where I think more or less it was actually him and all that, that's great. That's fantastic. So it might be that all of this digital artifice drives us back into analog reality and into the comfort and mystery and sometimes unpredictability of a squishy meat bags of meat and the funny things that we do. But yeah, Stacy, did you miss something? What do you mean?
Oh, no. Sorry, that was not meant to go to everybody.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Sorry. Yeah, that went to everybody. And do you mean about Rick's post in the chat? No. Oh, something else. Okay. Alex, you're muted.
I was just going to say, I think, Stacey, you can delete your if you click on it or something. I think you can delete it, can't you? If you want
Might be
to.
possible. Yeah.
Thank
Cool.
you, Alex.
So yeah, so for me, that's a positive side of all of this. Don't know if you all agree, disagree, care about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just submitted a project to Business Oregon, which they accepted, and they're asking for business partners to join to rethink the local food system and to anticipate, the changes that will happen to the funding source, funding levels of soup kitchens and food banks and Meals on Wheels and school meals, because they all got categorically hit. So how do you deal with this? Well, you have to, come and build a community-based response where everyone has to pull in, including Cisco and US Foods and Walmart and the big companies. So my hope is that something really good can come out of this, because rather than putting band-aids out there to feed the people without any change inside, maybe we can do something to fundamentally change the economics of the base, which right now is an extractive system, by national, multinational corporations. Why don't we try to make this self-sufficient instead?
Love that. And then my own energies and intentions are in that direction a lot. It's like, well, when things are broken, it's a chance to re-engineer things, and they were badly designed before this mess hit. So why don't we try to find ways where things actually work beautifully or better, and make them flexible enough that people can appropriate them, et cetera, et cetera. We've had some of those conversations in other calls. Kalia, please.
Yeah, I mean, building on this, at Pioneers last year, maybe it was this, I went to, anyways, there was a panel all about like the super cool, like farm to school lunch stuff where basically schools are buying directly from farmers and cooking the food on site. And I was like, okay, great, you're helping kids, but like I live alone. I cook all my own meals, organic, because I refuse to like engage with the industrial food system. It's a lot. And like I'm single, right? So, people with anyways. So, and it just became super clear. I've been radicalized against like ultra processed food, which are like in everything. So like the Walmarts and they're selling us shit. It's killing us. I mean, this is where RFK and Maha are right. But what if we figured out how we had like community kitchens that were where people like me paid and people on food stamps bought, because you can't buy hot food, right? So you have to figure out how you get bulk food shipped to like the site. People show up and buy rice and then like carry it to the kitchen, and that's their payment. So you're technically supporting them. And then they can get like hot food out of the community kitchen. And you're also potentially like having people spend an afternoon every month or every 2 weeks in the kitchen with their neighbors cooking for each other. We need community right now, and I believe like food preparation is like actually, my experience when I do it in community is incredible. I'm like, it's just so positive. And that's what humans have been doing for literally millions of years. And we've now outsourced this sort of fundamental like thing to like corporations. Like it's very broken. So I had this whole vision in this pioneers meeting of like, can we do what we're doing for school kids for like everybody? I think there's inspiration from religious communities that feed people a lot. Like the Sikhs really know how to feed people at scale. They do it.
Mhm.
Anyways, so those are my thoughts building on what was just shared.
Oh, yeah, thank you. You reminded me of Jose Andres' op-ed recently in the Times. I just put a gift link to it in the chat, where he was writing about feeding people in Gaza. And he said, the problem with bulk food is that people are showing up holding out their pan, and you're going to pour some raw rice into the pan? Like, that's not going to work. And also that the interception and misuse of raw foods is what gangs and everybody else wants to do, has a fully functioning economy around. So if you can create kitchens that make hot food and distribute them small enough in enough places, everybody can just show up and get hot meals, and that works really well. And I think it's an extremely compelling solution to the famine that is hitting Gaza. But also, it's a very nice solution to the broader social issue you just described, Kalia. Because if everybody doesn't have to go source their own ingredients, cook their own thing, but we can show up and get to know one another and sit together over meals, I think a lot of good things happen. But this is different from the commercial restaurant thing we have set up. It's quite different from the commercial restaurant thing we have set up. Then restaurant food waste is a horrible thing. I like whenever I go to an event and I see a buffet, especially a fancy event, and the buffet at the end of the meal, they've kept the buffet full. So there is a whole mess of very edible food, and I don't really know what's going to happen to it that is filling those trays, because a nice hotel doesn't ever want these things to look empty. It's bad. Anyway, Klaus and others know way too much about all the brokenness of the current food system. Rick, please.
Yeah, just in response to what's just said, I just put for people who are not familiar with nutritionfacts.org, it's Michael Greger's life's work on the effect of nutrition on health, and it's evidence-based. He has a particular style that reminds me, I met him once, and I described him as the John Cleese of nutrition. He's a really nice, eccentric guy and very knowledgeable. His latest book on how not to age is 600 pages with 20,000 references, and talk about deep dive. If you want to know how not to age, you want to look at his book. I'm going through it at the moment. I tell you, there's so much information there, so many great tips. And it's all about what Klaus knows, which is nutrition, exercise, healthy lifestyle, social cohesion, stupid. Anyway, that's my rant. But I will return to I'll leave this for you to look at later, Jerry, which is about curiosity and using compound questions. And I really took the things to heart last week when Mike was challenging me. Can you get it down to 5 to 7 words short, Bill? And my immediate reaction was, hell no. We wanted to go in the opposite direction. If you've got something semantically dense, we should be curious about what does that mean? What is humanism? How can AI actually help us? Emancipatory learning, what's that? And we need new learning methods, what's that? So I'm inviting you to take your time to reflect on something I've said there, and it challenges the holy grail of some of the assumptions that are made in this group. And people have challenged me repeatedly on them. And I'm deciding, okay, I'm learning from you guys. And whenever you encounter resistance to change, it's a phenomenal opportunity to learn. And I have to go at the top of the hour, Jerry. So, if you want to look at it, fine. If you don't, that's fine. But I will certainly share my output of the question I posed there and put it in next week so that you can see how you can create a hand learning module that you can then use as a platform for generative dialogues. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Um,
Sorry.
I'm interested in what audience you do find, Rick, and who loves what you write, and I have a suspicion that your MO that you've just described for us, it works for somebody. I'm sure it does, because humans are really varied, et cetera, and some people will like the puzzles you're putting in front of them. Several of us have just been reporting to you that your puzzles aren't working for us, and they don't work for me. And I agree with everything you're trying to convince us of. Like when we sit here and talk, you and I are like on board. I think, yep, check, and then I go look at your writings and I can't begin to get into them because they feel like you're putting everything into every post. Like it's like a hologram. Every post is a hologram of everything you care about. And I'm like, I can't unpack every post that way. My brain doesn't follow that way, but I bet you some people's brains do, right? And I don't know who those people are and what interactions you're having with them, and happy to help with that. But I'm just reporting back that what you've just told us is you guys tried to give me advice. I listened to it carefully, but I'm not going to follow it because
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
My approach is to give you the tangle and let you puzzle through it. That's what I heard.
That's not what yeah, well, that's what you heard. That's not my perception. And that's your perception. And that's why we have to work through our classing perceptions. Cool. And so I would suggest you look at section 2 of that. That is work in progress. And so, I've talked about the KSS principle, which is keep sophistication this side of simplicity. And this is a mindset shift from an educational paradigm that focuses on content to a learning paradigm that focuses on process. We've got too much freaking content in the world and we don't know how to process it. So we're disabled. And so I'm not, I'm rolling with your resistance, not against it. I'm thinking, well, how could I maybe open some people's door to get a little inquisitive or curious? Okay, I don't understand what this question means, and I put one in. I'll come back and demonstrate. That's not a particular complex question, but it's the orientation that people bring that's predominantly reductionistic, looking for instant clarity, instant comprehension with fast thinking, and we haven't helped people overcome their indoctrination of fast thinking in order to enter the world of slow thinking. That's a different world. And we can continue the conversation offline or next week. Thank you. But I have to go at the top of the hour.
Thanks, Rick. Welcome to the call, Ken. As you have detected, likely, we're not particularly talking about the melting of reality and its effects, but we've had an interesting sort of journey through a bunch of other related things. And Alex, I think you were interested in interjecting a moment ago. Did you want to pick up that thought, or you good?
Merely jokingly say all these things about being healthy by eating good food and whatever, I'm all for it. But can someone give me a thing that says if you eat this good food, you will be healthy, but you don't need to do the exercise with it? It's just that will be the winner.
That'll be the winner. We'll just use electrostimulation to pretend like we're working our muscles. Klaus.
Can I just interrupt there? All you have to do is 150 minutes walking per week. It's not a big demand. That's the minimum, not a target. Okay. So, Alex, I suspect there's a little hope for you. You may already be achieving your goals and you don't even know that is the minimum standard.
And Jerry, Klaus, I wanted to interject something real quick, if I could. Just to Rick's thoughts about process. I just wanted to say that there's something very useful, and I'm not talking about the whole reading, I'm just talking about the question. There's something very useful about just seeing where somebody tunes in, just in terms of gauging where their curiosity is. So for that, I do understand why Rick does what he does. Over.
Thank you, Stacey. Mr. Mager.
Yeah, just to spin out, that's not what I raised my hand for, but just to spin this out, Rick, I use spiral dynamics to instruct the AI. Well, but you're not instructing the AI to address an audience that you have pre-selected, right? Because if you use spiral dynamics, and say this is an orange audience or a blue audience, a faith-based audience, or a environmentally focused audience, then the AI will change its language, and you will not talk about humanist-guided AI-enabled emancipatory neo-learning, because no one understands what the hell that is. So that's sort of the idea. So, I mean, maybe your audience is quite narrow in this particular aspect, but if you want to be heard, then there's a lot of people who wouldn't dial in on this. But what I wanted to mention, the other reality that we're facing is that the business community is so strong that our best intentions don't materialize. So Kennedy, for example, had this great idea, take chemicals out of food because we're killing our children, reduce the amount of processed foods. And guess what? None of it made it through the Farm Bill and made it through the latest regulatory hurdles. Nothing, right?
Nothing?
And nothing. And
Wow.
so I mean, of course, the Sierra Club and all these groups that I'm traveling with, they are tracking this closely and in great detail. And a lot of the Sierra Club had an internal debate before the election about supporting Kennedy or not. And we collectively decided that it's the best of bad options to support Kennedy because of what he stands for and how strong he came on, and how much support he had, and he just crashed and burned. Another issue, for example, SNAP benefits, you're not allowed to buy a hot meal. So you have soup kitchens who are not able to accept a SNAP voucher, because it's a hot meal. And then you go, well, wait a second. I mean, who makes up these rules? It's just an arbitrary rule. And in all reality, you should be able to change that rule. Bingo, gone. Now you can put money into soup kitchens, which employ local people. It can be a church that has a kitchen. They can buy local food. So the changes that the Heritage Foundation and these groups are really want to do, and what a lot of them I agree with, are common sense based changes, are simply getting squished, in the political process by corporations that have too much power. And Trump is not this Trump administration is not the group that's going to challenge this power. So that's what I'm saying is as reality unfolds over the next few months, we will recognize some serious bottlenecks that where story changes from impact and reality.
Thanks, Hans. Rick, back to you.
Well, I just have to respond to you, Klaus. I agree with you. And let me be clear about something. I've heard this feedback repeatedly, and I think you don't know how I'm listening to you and responding to it. So it's presumption of you, Jerry, to say I'm not listening.
No. I went and looked at your post. I went and looked at your post, which I assumed to be a reply to what we're telling you. And it was nothing like that.
Well, I'm talking about here and now, about you said a moment ago, you can go back and replay it and see whether my perception of what you said was what I said. So this is where we need to have some healthy disagreements. So
could you guys take this offline?
Rick,
no.
let's not tap the whole group with this.
No, well, let me just finish. Klaus, I listened to you.
Rick, could you take this offline?
No, I'd like to finish
I'm
my
feeling
sentence.
hijacked here.
Well, that's okay. Let's just hang in there for a second. Let me finish my sentence before you interrupt me. All I was going to say, Klaus, I'm doing a search on the very question that you asked, and I will share it if people are interested on how to explain that construct using spiral dynamics. I do it differently. I do it on reading level. That's fine. But what I am impressed with is how this is triggering certain people and going off screen. And that's fine. I think we need to have more healthy disagreements, because I don't think we're good at it, and people don't listen. They get emotionally hijacked and leave or turn out. that's something that reflexivity is worthwhile using to understand that process. And I said I had to leave at the top of the hour. I'm sorry to leave, but I will leave at the request of Gil for reasons other than his request. Thank you.
I don't think he requested you leave. I think he just requested that we take that issue offline, which we are doing now. Anyway, excuse me. Alex, please.
On the issue that we were talking earlier on, I actually wasn't here last week, so I don't know what the rig conversation is really about. But I did put up spiral dynamics. I'm intrigued by the colors on the webpage. But so I'll look at it later. But I think it was Klaus that said that when whatever the current administration is doing hits the buffers, people will wake up. That's not my experience. Remember, the reason this administration is there, as far as I'm concerned, is because the previous ones and one before and the one before that didn't do the right thing. And we have administrations that are the opposite political perspective from the US one. And trust me, they're not doing anything either. Everything we just spoke about, hardly anything gets really done. So what I was going to say was, and I'm not challenging that what you said, because I think you're basically right. But people's capacity to say it was bad before, at least they tried. Because that is how previous UK political parties have stayed in power and won elections one after the other by saying, look, at least we're trying. Well, maybe we didn't fail, but if the other people come in, they're the monsters. You don't want to. And literally, they kept getting the votes. So I'm just urging a bit of caution on when the train hits the buffer, that people are going to change their minds. And then it comes to politics, how many are middle of the ground people and what happens and, gerrymandering and all the rest of it. But that was just people's capacity to excuse is quite dramatically, it's very deep. That was my point, really.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Alex. To excuse and also I think to forget. And maybe just to adapt, like, oh, new reality. Okay, I guess I'll just live with this new reality. Partly also, I think we're overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly. But they also, their ability for the UK side, their ability to paint the other side as the monsters was quite impressive. With the support of the press, mainly, the mainstream media.
Right.
And I don't know how that is reflected in the US because I don't look at any US press really. So,
this has been a strange call for me because I feel like we've sort of glided nowhere near the topic I thought I had proposed, which is fine. That's how we roll.
Can you propose it again so we can maybe pick up on it now?
Well, the question was, if the things we're pointing to, if the artifacts we're pointing to are now no longer reliable because anything can be faked or made up, and somebody can pose as Obama, like supporting Trump, which I think will be a cold day in hell when that happens. But you could make a very credible deep fake of that and post it, and then once everybody's sort of written about it, it sort of melds its way into the human consciousness, and we adapt, and so all these things are having some effect on society. And there might be a couple silver linings. I tried to point to one, which is we might be driven back to an analog presence with each other, which I would like. I think that's a good answer, a good outcome. But what else? And how do we handle this? If we think that this is imminent, and then there's also will these large language models eat their own tail because the synthetic output that they're training themselves on is now going to be more numerous, more voluminous than the human output that we're worried that they're training themselves on, which is a series of complicated questions all interacting right there. What happens? How does this play out? Go ahead, Alex.
Can I make a couple of points on this? Which was,
yeah.
Firstly, the okay, how do I say this? People, you'll be okay. We question things. We're interested in a bit more, the next layer down. Let's say some of you are really, really good thinkers, all the way very deep. But generally, in our forum, we question the next layer of, let me call it reality, because that's what I'll call it in a lazy academic fashion. What is your experience? Because my experience is that a hell of a lot of people do not care anymore. They care about the fact that things are getting expensive, but I don't think they care whether the news is real or not. And how is that going to change? So it's your point, Jerry, but I'm thinking your point's relevant to us, very relevant to us. There's a whole lot of people who don't watch the news, don't listen to the radio news, they listen to music. And is that something that you guys experience as well?
For sure. And this is one of the outcomes of the flood the zone with shit strategy that is currently being employed. Is that when you confuse everybody about everything, they give up. And when they've given up, they're way easier to steer towards stuff. And sometimes they'll seize on things that are particularly stupid or strong because they seem strong, for example. But we're seeing that a ton. I think that dynamic has been influencing our last several electoral cycles, et cetera, et cetera. And then when people are overwhelmed and confused, they give up. And anybody else?
So what does that mean?
Yeah. What else? What does that mean? Anybody else worried about this?
Yes.
I remember. Go ahead, Klaus.
It brings me back to a different way of looking at this break in reality. Yeah, because at some point in time, you can be flooded with images that are confusing and stories that are depicting a reality that simply doesn't exist. But when it hits you and you lose your health insurance and you lose your food access, then that's a different story. That's when it gets real. Now, and then you can only blame so many. So that's and that's what I was referring to earlier for when Dave Brooks laid this thing out historically. That's when an autocrat turns into suppression and violence. Because then you can't control the story anymore, no matter what fancy tools you have. People don't respond to being misled any longer because it's real, it's personal, it's hurting you. And then I mean, look, they're already setting in place preventive measures for people to get into the street, right? I mean, you're already deploying a militarized force, so in case you have protests breaking out, they're already ready for that. So this is, I mean, we're gonna head into October, November is when these cuts really start hitting. And no one's focused on it. People are simply, they're not focused on it.
So again, I'll say some people are very focused on this, like really worried about it. And I think there's an interesting sense-making question here. So one of the things I've been tracking is, hey, logically, if you look at the Trump tariff war, that should be causing economic chaos. Then prices should be rising. We should be spiking inflation, stuff like that. Not happening yet. Employment is really full. Inflation hasn't spiked. And there's a bunch of economic thinkers and geopolitical thinkers who are trying to figure out, is there a lag period? What's going on? But I think posing some hypotheses and watching the data to figure out what happens. And Trump is, of course, strong-arming companies to swallow the price hikes. He's like, yeah, you're not going to raise prices, or I'm going to shame you in public. And we've figured out that that's a really powerful tool that Trump has invented. Trump has more elbow room than any politician in recent memory for me. He can do kind of anything, and that's really impressive to his followers. I have to admit that Obama did 8 years of no scandals. One day he wears a light gray suit at a press briefing, and that's the biggest scandal of the Obama administration. But he ran 8 years as president of the superpower in the world in a straitjacket. He was in a straitjacket and didn't try to tear the straitjacket. This is my own read of like the administration in the rearview mirror, just in the rearview mirror. And I wish he had torn the straitjacket. And so does the country. The country said, okay, we'll give this guy a go. And then they voted for him again I remember an interview in 2016, just before Trump gets elected. I remember one journalist went across the country and they meet somebody in West Virginia and they pick up this woman's grandfather who joins them in the car and he's talking. He says, I voted for the black guy twice and things aren't any better. And so he votes for Trump. And I'm like, that's like the reality of what's on the ground for me. But if we're a sense making community, then asking questions like, hey, when you kick out Medicare, when you take away SNAP, when you do all these things, it's going to have these effects. And Klaus, when you say this kicks in October, November, that's really nice. That's empirical. I can go and I don't have the time or the expertise to watch the actual numbers on the Fred database or wherever, but I'm looking for people who are doing exactly that, people whose voices I trust, which is a second layer or second order question from last week's call, kinda. But I'm very interested in that question and how it plays out, but I'm not willing to presume those results because sometimes complex systems adjust and adapt and the people get fed some other way, which I think Kalia had to drop off the call, but I think that's what Kalia and I would really wish, that the entire way we get food and shelter just changes. And if the motive force for the change was somebody tore apart a government program that was feeding a lot of people, then that sucks, but that's interesting. And so I'm not willing to I'm worried sick, but I'm not willing to prejudge the outcome or to assume an outcome because I see all too often that outcomes we thought were going to happen. I have the thought T91. I was pretty sure that Trump was going to be corralled by one of the legitimate cases. There were a couple of cases that should never have been brought, but there were some very legitimate cases that I thought were going to stick. And guess what? Velcro. Absolutely. No, not Velcro. Teflon. Like Teflon Ron, like, Reagan, nothing would stick to him. But, Donnie is more Teflon than Ronnie. Ooh, that was kind of rhymey. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox for a second and go to Doug.
There's something about like the empirical thing about things that work. And yesterday there was this fascinating piece on one of the channels about how Gavin Newsom has been channeling Trump, but with his message.
Oh my! And the tweets and whatever are hilarious.
And energetically, it's working in a very Trumpian way. And it's sort of the first time somebody said, well, if it's working for him, maybe I should do what's working for him for me and see what happens. And what's working is the vernacular. And to a certain extent, what he's proving is that it's not Trump in personam, it's his vernacular. And in a very Andy Warhol, everybody's famous for 15 minutes kind of way. As an energetic, semantic, textural, cultural expression, mode of expression of a moment in history that energetically activates people, is pushing people's buttons. And I wouldn't discount dimensionally all the moving parts of that, which is also using X as a channel of communication. Like, there are like all of these dimensions to the phenomena of what's going on culturally. And so in the face of either cultural norms, morals, ethics, values, institutions, practices, either becoming meh in a digital vernacular, becoming irrelevant, like, okay, I don't care. Like, not relevant to me, not an active ingredient in my experience, perceptually on a human experiential level. Or I'm sick and tired of it, or I don't like it, or whatever. But there has been a de facto shift in the way people are communicating with each other and the way they're responding or not to what matters to them. And there's a quaintness to the folks that are trapped in the previous cultural post-industrial frame.
Do you mean us?
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
didn't want
wasn't
to.
feeling that quaint until you said that.
I didn't want to stir an attribution, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, pining for the good old days, and like the concept that data is important, the concept that truth and accuracy in reporting is important, and representation is important.
These things are quaint. You're right.
These things are like really, really quaint. But that ship has sailed. And QAnon and gaming culture and generation, X, Y, and Z, like they were raised in a post-digital era. And it's a whole different orientation. And I'll be the first one to say I'm coming up on 70, and I have no capacity to tell you what that gestalt is. I don't recognize it. I don't understand it, and I'm wrestling with how to gain insight into it. And it doesn't help reading articles about people doing observations about Gen XYZ employees. It's like it's a different species. It's a different animal of human that is much more. First, I think they're much smarter. I think they see things much clearer in terms of bottom lines. And I think there's a general rejection of the principles on which the old system operated.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't buy a house and they don't see a future in which they will be able to, even earning, $200,000-$300,000 a year.
Yeah.
I think you're painting a very nice description of a future OGM topic.
They cannot rationalize any of the old stuff meaning anything because it doesn't mean anything to them. They're trying to calculate for X on how to get what they want and have the lifestyle they want and do the things they want to do with the friends they have. None of them, by the way, are on LinkedIn or Facebook or X or any of these services. They're all outside of social media completely. I don't think my son checks, it's all he can do to check his email. And he said last visit, like, as soon as I can get rid of a smartphone, I will be. Has no interest in that. So, what are we looking at? Like, and I think Gavin Newsom is onto something. I don't know what that is.
That's right.
But I think he's onto something.
Yeah.
And I'm complete.
Thanks, Doug. I have a hard stop at the half hour, and I'm eager to hear Ken if he has a poem. But given that, let's go to Gil.
I'll be as quick as I can. Douglas, thank you for the rant. Gavin's really interesting. People yelled at him a few months ago when he was having right-wing influencers on his podcast, thinking he had sold out. And I thought, no, he has not at all. He's number one, researching, and number two, positioning. And he's going all in on this. He's clearly declared for president. And he's going right into the heart of MAGA, and it's brilliant, crazy stuff. And it may work and it may backfire, and who knows? Scott Galloway, Prof G, had a podcast in the last day or two saying that like everybody's running for president. It's fascinating. He said everybody's calling him to say, "Can I be on your show? Can you give me money?"
Oh, wow.
Which is to say, I'm running for president. He's really worth following. A lot of stuff on the cohort that Doug is talking about, and young men in particular, and the alienation throughout society. And it reminds me, Jerry, to what you were saying about before, or maybe somebody was, that we are a really, really, really rarefied group of people here. We pay attention to shit that most people don't pay any attention to and don't know about and don't care about. I mean, Jerry, you talked about the three major networks, years ago. Most people look at news, get their news from Fox News, but most people get their news from TikTok. or their
Yeah.
friends or other things. So like, we operate in a strange little bubble ourselves. And the last thing I wanted to say, and then toss it over to Ken, is that I think both Klaus and Jerry talked about how it might be good if everything completely falls to shit, and then there'll be impetus for change. In the completely falling to shit, millions of people die, and tens of millions of people suffer horribly. And people are already estimating the death count from the MAGA moves of just the last 8 months. And this was always a thing that I heard from some of my Marxist-Leninist friends back in the old days, where they talked about heightening the contradictions. It's really good if things get worse, because then the revolutionary fervor will rise. Well, no, it's really bad if things get worse, because people die and the wrong kinds of revolutionary fervor arrive. And I'm not playing that game. So I just wanted to throw that back at you.
Oh, good. Thanks,
Sorry.
Gil. And I'm hoping Stacey has something.
I didn't expect that much ire to rise with it.
I know.
But there you go.
Yeah. And I'm hoping Stacey has something brighter and warmer to share
Hope
with
so.
us.
Hope so.
Quicker.
Bye, Sean.
Bye, Sean.
Bye, Sean.
Yeah, I just want to say, going back to what Doug was saying about how quaint this group, I was just thinking how quaint to think that we ever had honesty. Somebody last week said something and I kind of took offense to it. I was like, don't include me in that we. But the truth is, they said everybody exaggerates and lies to make their point. And for the most part, that's kind of true. And it's always been that way. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. That seems like one of those truths, like that 63.7% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Sir Ken, over to you in the booth if you have a poem.
I do have a poem. This one's called Afraid So by Jean Marie Beaumont. Is it starting to rain? Did the check bounce? Are we out of coffee? Is this going to hurt? Could you lose your job? Did the glass break? Was the baggage misrouted? Will this go on my record? Are you missing much money? Was anybody injured? Is the traffic heavy? Do I have to remove my clothes? Will it leave a scar? Must you go? Will this be in the papers? Is my time up already? Are we seeing the understudy? Will it affect my eyesight? Did all the books burn? Are you still smoking? Is the bone broken? Will I have to put him to sleep? Was the car totaled? Am I responsible for these charges? Are you contagious? Will we have to wait long? Is the runway icy? Was the gun loaded? Could this cause side effects? Do you know who betrayed you? Is the wound infected? Are we lost? Can it get any worse?
Oh, that was like a tour of the universe.
Wow.
That was like a tour of the universe.
That's
Damn.
amazing. What was the title again?
Afraid So.
Afraid So. Afraid So.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Want to hear it one more time?
Yes, please. I was going to ask you to. Yeah. Gil might drop out halfway.
Afraid So by Jean Marie Beaumont. Is it starting to rain? Did the check bounce? Are we out of coffee? Is this going to hurt? Could you lose your job? Did the glass break? Was the baggage misrouted? Will this go on my record? Are you missing much money? Was anybody injured? Is the traffic heavy? Do I have to remove my clothes? Will it leave a scar? Must you go? Will this be in the papers? Is my time up already? Are we seeing the understudy? Will it affect my eyesight? Did all the books burn? Are you still smoking? Is the bone broken? Will I have to put him to sleep? Was the car totaled? Am I responsible for these charges? Are you contagious? Will we have to wait long? Is the runway icy? Was the gun loaded? Could this cause side effects? Do you know who betrayed you? Is the wound infected? Are we lost? Can it get any worse?
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's
Very good.
That's a
Priceless.
gift. That's a gift.
priceless and
I love it.
troubling. Priceless and troubling all at once.
It's so versatile. Like it's really handy. Anytime. Pull that one out.
Great. So
Thank you.
let's call this one now. And thank you all. See you in a week, and some of you sooner in different venues. But
Okay.
let's be careful out there.
Take
Ciao.
care all. Bye-bye.
Ciao.